Good evening, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are from. This is the Meshery development meeting. Today is 21st of July, and we have a packed list of topics to discuss today. And before we move on to the topics and the announcements, we have a tradition of letting newcomers introduce themselves to the community. So if anyone is new on this particular call, or if they are new altogether to the layer 5 community, feel free to turn on your mic and introduce yourself, and let's get to know you. Are there anyone who is joining this call for the first time?
Yeah, I'm joining for the first time. It's Shivam Chaudhary.
Hi, Shivam.
So I've just been introduced to coding. So I just wanted to explore open source.
Okay. What have you been working on? Like what tech stack?
Basically, a mechanical engineer.
Okay, sounds good. When did you join Layer 5?
Sorry.
No, I mean, when did you join the community?
I'm in yesterday.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome, Shivam, and we look forward to see your work here. Anyone else who would like to introduce themselves?
Hello everyone. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I'm audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah. I'm Gravish Purohit and I'm pre-final year CSE student and I've experience in React.js and I'm learning Golang. So I wish to contribute in this community. So hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So you are interested in Golang, and Layer 5 has a lot of Golang based projects, and
Okay.
there are
So
a lot
I'm
of
just learning like I had completed my basics in Golang and I'm learning like I will be intermediate in like couple of weeks. So I can like easily start with good search issues and then later I can work on major projects too.
sounds good. Yeah, like if you look into the Meshery repo, I am sure like there are a lot of good first issues.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, I have committed to like one, two good search issues and like I couldn't get it much like I want to work to. So I contacted with Lee and he told me to like like every time just write it down that can I do it, can I do it. So
yeah, sounds good. Yeah, like yeah, you can just comment on the issues, and someone will assign it to you. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for that, Gravish, and look forward to seeing your work.
May I?
Yeah, sure, Aditya.
Yeah, so hello everyone, I'm Aditya and I'm pretty new to this community. And I have also attended the meeting on Monday. So I find it very insightful that how this community is being organizing these weekly meetings, and this is like really new to me. And I'm glad that I have joined this community. And yeah, I have been learning Golang, and right now I'm uh, uh, starting to learn about microservices, like how we can make microservices in Golang, because I find it very useful for scaling a product, I think. So right now I'm working on my skills, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that intro. Yeah, sounds like you will fit right in here. And uh, is there anyone else who would like to introduce themselves? For the newcomers, we do have a newcomers meeting that's on every Thursday. So if you head on to meet.layer5.io or to this link, you will find uh, all the meetings in the layer 5 community. So Thursday's newcomer call is a good place to get started and get oriented with all the different projects in layer 5 and finding areas to work on, or help or get help to uh, troubleshoot any issues you are having, like setting up the development environment and all. So that's a good place to jump in. So if there is not anyone else to introduce, we will move on to the announcements for today. Anita, would you like to start?
Hello, everyone. You're welcome to today's meeting. I probably didn't drop this in Slack. It skipped my mind, but I remembered into this meeting, we set out a topic on the discourse that for those persons who have topics to bring up during our weekly general meeting. So if you have a topic regarding anything pertaining this community, or you have a suggestion to make, or you have something you want to share with us in general, yes, so you can just drop your topic under this topic in the discuss um, forum, and I'll include it in the minutes for this week's meeting, and subsequently too when the meetings come up. So just comment under the topic and I'll pick a topic immediately. I'm just saying so many topics. Yeah, but just drop your topic there and I'll attend to it.
Thank you, Anita. So Anita was describing about the Therefore community meeting, which happens on every Friday. So if you have topics, you can submit it to the meeting minutes, and you'll find all those in the link I shared above, the meet.clarify.io link. Uh, Next up, we have Abhishek. Would you like to talk about the new release? Oh, is Abhishek not on yet? Okay, I guess Abhishek has not joined it. Lee, would you like to mm, talk about it quickly? The
Yeah, uh, yeah, sure. So what release are we on? So are we on 37? Or are we, as of this morning, are we 38?
Yeah, just of half an hour ago, we are 38.
Okay. Boy, I can't keep up with all that you all are doing. So great. So just for quick familiarity, there's Meshery is, well, it's not a 1.0 yet. It has functionality that people are using in production. It has functionality around performance management in particular that has been around for a long time. Some of that is tried and true. It has a few architectural components that need to be added between v0.5 and 1.0. And you can see some of those in the roadmap. The roadmap is listed in a couple of places. One is in the Layer 5 community drive. There's a Google Doc under the Meshery folder called roadmap. And there's also a roadmap.md in the GitHub repo, Meshery repo. And the community, this project has been, there's a lot to understand about how releases are done, all of the automation behind the release. auto drafted release notes, auto published release notes, auto created error codes. Hopefully Sayetan will have us doing auto release announcements, emails that go out automatically. My goodness, there's a lot behind the release. There's 2 different release channels, stable and edge. And anyway, the way that things have been going is that there are a couple of large features planned for the v0.6 release. Notably, there's a set of enhancements around support for patterns, service mesh patterns, enhancements for filters, so WebAssembly filters and how those are managed. What we've been seeing is that early aspects of features for the next release start to show up in point releases. So right now you can do some amount of filter management or pattern management, even application management in the current release, even though those things are roadmapped for v06 or v07. Architecturally, they're planned for in advance, and aspects of them sometimes are worked on in advance. And so, yeah, I don't know, just some thoughts about the releases in general. The particulars of this release that just went out, there's, well, Nabendu, the thing that compelled the release for the v0538 was what again?
Yeah. So Apple has released a new M1 chip. So Meshery CTL or the current version of Meshery could not be installed on the M1 chips. So what this release does is it builds a new binary for the Apple Silicon chips. So you can install it on Apple Silicon. I just tested it now, and it is working. So yeah, O.5.38 is support for Apple Silicon. All right. I guess Aditya is also not on the call. So to sum up what Aditya's topic is, like Aditya has been working on adding support for not adding support, like he has been testing Meshery on Raspberry Pi. So that's a valid use case for running Meshery and service meshes and Kubernetes. And he has some updates on that, and he'll be demoing that on the on Friday's community call. All right. Now let's move on to the topics for today's. And first up, we have Sayantan. So, Sayantan, would you like to talk more?
Yes, I would like to talk on this. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure. You can.
So actually, I'm going to talk about this. But we are actually, me and Rudraksh were working on this. So we are trying to generate the JSON schema and the definition for this adapter components. So these are the issues related to it. I have solved this OSM component. Not fully, like one part is left though, but I can show you this. And Rudraksh has also helped me in doing this. Actually, what we are doing is that we are creating a GitHub workflow for this, for generating those JSON schemas. Now, if you want to see the workflow, so actually this is the workflow I have written. Like first, we are going to take the manifest files. Now in the Istio, we had directly generated the manifest from the Istio CLI. But as OSM CLI does not have this manifest, so we have to call all those URLs and just convert it in the file names, and then we have just made merged all the files in a single folder. So I think there were actually 7 YML files. But next, we build this JSON schema. For this uh, uh, JSON schema building, we use this uh, QOpen API JSON schema. So actually, this is a node-based CLI for converting all the Open API schemas to JSON schemas. Actually, we use this QOpen API to convert the JSON schema. And then we have generated the workflow over here. Now, after going through this workflow, we actually got the schemas over in the template directory. In this workload, we got all the schemas. Now, the task that I was talking that was remaining, actually, these are the resources for the OSM components. So actually, we have to do like HTTP route group OSM dot and all these things. So that we differentiate between which resource are for which message. So that task is left for now for this OSM. And if you want to see the workflow for this, like how did it work actually, I can show you that also. I think oh, actually, let me just skip it for now. So these were the two workflows which actually generated all those schemas over there in the template directory. Yeah, I think that's it. And we also have these two issues like for the Kuma and the Lingard components. I think these two are the related issues.
Yes, I attend that. That's really exciting, actually. So for half of us on the call, I think we're somewhat familiar with the concept of a service mesh pattern. And for the other half of us, we may not be. I won't digress into describing that because we've got a decent sized agenda. But I'll drop some links maybe into chat so that others can digest what's happening with patterns and what do we mean. And so this is great. This is great because thus far it's really been the Istio adapter that has become patternized or supports patterns. The work that's been done, it looks like, I think other than maybe, are you in the process of namespacing the components or did you already namespace them?
No, actually, that part is only left actually. What Utkarsh was talking about, that was
Okay.
left.
I mean, it sounds like other than that, like it's high quality work, good, good job. One thing though that concerns me a little bit is that we might end up with multiple ways to generate those configurations. And by that, actually a few different ways. So one is that currently the Istio adapter and the OSM adapter are taking the approach of using that service mesh's CTL, its command line client to generate the manifests. And if you take that effort, which is unique to each service mesh times 8 more times, times 10 conceptually, that's a lot of repeating ourselves not in a uniform way. And it becomes a lot to maintain and sustain because inevitably those, for as much as people like to think of a CLI as an API or like as a contract that you can script around, they aren't. They're meant primarily for humans. People do script around CLIs just like we were just looking at, but those contracts are not upheld nearly as tightly as something that's designed to be an API and is versioned. And so for that reason, for the reason that we don't want to do, ideally not things that are one-off and specific to each mesh, that it would be probably advantageous if we're using a uniform approach to extracting JSON schema from each type of mesh. So that means dealing more directly with Kubernetes than we are with the individual mesh dealing more with the manifests themselves directly. So think about that for a moment, while I also say that the manner in which, so outside of whether or not we're using the CLI of each individual mesh or whether or not we're pulling the manifest directly, irrespective of that, the operation to do it, to perform that task, I wonder if that shouldn't be an adapter operation that is invoked through a workflow. So what I mean to say is that we will find use cases where the adapter itself needs to perform that task potentially real time. Why would that be? Well, maybe someone's been running Meshery for a couple of weeks, maybe a month, maybe a couple of months. Eventually, there's a new version of Open Service Mesh that comes out. Well, with that new version, there's new manifests. The manifests have either changed or there's a new resource. So how does the running adapter, go about supporting that new version of Open Service Mesh? Oh, well, one answer could be, well, you upgrade Meshery and its version so that it can support the new version of Open Service Mesh. Okay, that could be an answer. Like you have to go out and maybe not upgrade all of Meshery, but just upgrade the Meshery Open Service Mesh adapter. Okay, that's reasonable. People do that kind of a thing with software today. If you want for some software to be compatible with some other software, sometimes you have to upgrade one or the other or both. All right. Although if the operation, the workflow that we have, that's a build time concern, a build time workflow. If that's built into a runtime workflow in Meshery, in the adapter, the Open Service Mesh adapter, or all of the adapters, one, we begin to have uniform capability across all of them, both at build time and runtime, that you can then, if we're interfacing with the Kubernetes manifests themselves, the Golang that is written into the adapters becomes, well, potentially entirely uniform. Right? We're dealing with manifests. Uniformly, we extract the JSON. Uniformly, a workflow does run and does do exactly what Sayatan you've just shown. But the utilities but sustaining that effort becomes easier, and the ability to perform that operation real time also becomes possible because it's part and parcel to the adapter itself. What do you think? I guess, what does anyone think? Utkarsh, what did you think?
Actually, there would be, definitely this would be the better approach, but there would be definitely, it would be quite difficult. The reason is that obviously we can't fetch a manifest on the fly. So if adapter takes the responsibility of doing these things on its own, the primary difficulty is that conversion of to JSON schema version 4, JSON schema draft 4. The second difficulty is that if there are not that, I think this would be a very rare situation that you're running two services at the same time. So basically figuring out that so there are two situations. One is when you are actually grabbing the manifest from running cluster, basically getting CRD so that every flow looks very similar. In that case, figuring out that which customer resource actually belong to which service mesh, or does it even belong to the service mesh, that would be a primary difficulty. The second one is actually converting to JSON schema. So although this approach would be far more straightforward, it's just that there are a few hiccups probably in this approach.
In terms of discerning which CRDs are relevant to which service mesh, it should be the case that each of those CRDs are named, one, that's the responsibility of the individual service mesh adapter. Mm-hmm. And so that adapter should be looking for what I assume would be namespaced CRDs that come from the control plane. It might also be the case that the adapters don't need to interrogate Kubernetes and actively running or actively described custom resource definitions, but rather the same bundle that it uses or the same way in which it retrieves the installation files. I mean, it could use that mechanism as well. which would then for sure provide clarity over which resources are assigned to what service mesh. So Sayatan, mostly it's this is fantastic work. We should go use this. We should, finish off the last little bit of the feedback that you've gotten and persist those patterns, those components. And then as we go forth and you stare down, you give a cold stare to doing this 8 more times and then sustaining it over time. Think about some of the feedback, the approach that I'm describing right now, and let's see if that makes sense. The other thing that Utkarsh is pointing out is that if this is built into the runtime of the adapter, right now the adapter will need to make a system, will need to incorporate the what do we call it? The open API node application, and make a system level call to perform those things. And that's, some of the things you have written into the workflow today would need to be incorporated into the adapter.
Yeah, sure. I will think about this.
Good. This is nice. This is exciting. I know a lot of that is abstract from some of the rest of us on the call, but we will all get there. It won't all be jargon at some point. So.
Also, sorry for interrupting. Just a little the point that did you figure out that versioning thing, Santan? Did you update your workflow according to that? Like service mesh name and service mesh resource name?
No, actually, I was stuck in that part only. Like, I couldn't update that. I tried it, but it was failing. So I did that.
Okay, so sure, we'll talk about it later. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sayantan. Thank you, others. So let's move on to the next item. So Dhruv, Jubril, or Rudraksh, would any of you like to give an update on the SMI conformance action?
So who's going? Is it me?
Yeah, Rudraksh, you can do it.
Okay, so we have discovered what's happening. It's the event streamer not receiving the changes and not reflecting it on the UI. Dhruv is currently working on fixing it. Hopefully we'll be able to fix it, and if not, I'm also working on a little hack. So we have 2 plans and they should work.
Good.
And including that, we also have we would like a review on those updated Google slides. We created a flow of how SMI is working for the call itself. One slide left is basically the CI action call, if I'm not wrong. I don't necessarily think we need that, but it's up to you whether we want it. We can finish that off. And yeah, that's all. We removed the memes.
I haven't done anything with the slides, so please don't embarrass me.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's okay. We can skip the third slide for now. I don't think it's a big deal.
Any other comments, guys? Lee? Yeah.
Yeah, hey, just I'm always anxious. I think about the fact that there's a lot of people on the call, many of which I've had the pleasure of talking to, and some of which I haven't yet. I think a lot of which kind of who are kind of like me and looking at stuff like this and going, that diagram looks pretty neat. What the heck is going on though? Oh my gosh, that's a lot of lines. Meshery adapter library and mesh kit. What's mesh kit? If like I imagine a lot of us have a ton of questions. So I'll make a promise to all of you, and Samir may I don't know, one of you may make me break this promise. I don't know. We'll see. Here's my challenge to you. Anyone who asks a question on discuss.layer5.io, if within a week you don't have an answer, somebody hasn't responded, somebody didn't explain, didn't answer your question, then we're going to have to figure out I don't know if we have to figure out what happens. I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot going on in here, and management software can be quite stupid if it's done wrong, and it's pretty easy to understand what's going on if it's fairly stupid. We're really trying for Meshery if this thing's going to manage a service mesh, that's emerging tech. That's confusing as hell. If it's trying to make a service mesh even easier to understand, that's a really tough job. And if it's going to do that times 10, oh, wow. We need to have intelligent approaches to this. And one of those ways that we're trying to make this intelligent is through use of a service mesh pattern. That's why there's a book being written on to teach the rest of the world what the heck a service mesh pattern is. I'm hopeful that in a year's time or less, there's a lot of people asking that question, like literally Googling, what the heck is a service mesh pattern? And that it would be really neat if any and all of you that are on the call right now, could field that question, could say, oh yeah, conceptually it's like this, like that you felt comfortable enough to casually describe it. That would be awesome. It would be awesome for you, mostly. It would be awesome. It would be great for the project as well. But people are trying to figure out what are the conventions by which what does a service mesh do? How should I use it? How do I know if I'm using it well? That's what these patterns describe. And what we're trying to do is take those architectural patterns, the way that you say, if you want to use a service mesh to do retries, retry a failed request, here are the considerations that you should contemplate as you configure your infrastructure, as you configure your, what do you call it? Now, Samir's got me all distracted. As you configure your service mesh. Good, well, that's a lot of things to consider. Again, how do I know if I'm doing it right? Well, here's a pattern. Here's a sample pattern. It's got some best practices in it. Start there. And when that's described, it should be like an artifact you can hand. Here's a YAML file. Here's a pattern. Go take that and go apply it. Go run with that. The system today that will take those patterns and realize them, affect the infrastructure, orchestrate the infrastructure to apply them is Meshery. And that's why we're talking a lot about patterns. And so that's why it'll also be really powerful that people can say, well, hey, I feel good about how we've configured retries in my infrastructure. I didn't configure 400 of them because I know that our user might wait too long if they're having to sit there and wait for 400 failed requests to retry. And I didn't configure 0 because that isn't resilient enough. And so I found the sweet spot, and that's in part because I started with this pattern. And maybe I augmented it, maybe I reasoned over it, but you know what? I can apply this pattern to any mesh that I'm using, and wow, okay, this is good management software. Like Meshery helps me do this. Meshery is the star of that book, and so there's context. So I digressed for a minute. Anyway, if you have questions, go ask them on that forum, and let's get them answered. With that, back to wherever we were.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I totally digress from SMI conformance, which is SMI, service mesh interface, is a specification, and we're going to be, there's a community meeting. We'll be hosting it today in about 3 hours. Jubril, Dhruv, and Rudraksh are going to go present on that meeting. They're going to go show off their good work from what they've been doing in this community. Part of that is that if you visit the blog on this website, it talks about how Meshery is the conformance tool that verifies the SMI specifications. And so these three outstanding gentlemen are going to go show this blog in action and go show how Meshery does this validation. And they're going to explain the charts that they were just showing. So good. Yep. Sounds like the gist of it, gentlemen, is that you've got a bug or two, you've got a hack in place to show people that there's a pipelinable way to integrate SMI conformance into your GitHub via GitHub action. And there's also a way to just run these manually. And what the goal today isn't to give a conference type talk. The goal today is to like get to the point and say, hey, look, we spent a lot of time building out, you all spent a lot of time building out this conformance, this validation capability. And what you're trying to do is you're asking the other service mesh teams to go ahead and start running conformance tests. That's the goal. You need to empower them with the right amount of knowledge to go deploy the GitHub action or go run these things manually. Understand they're going to start manually, which is great because that works or should work. And that'll give you a little bit of time to fix any remaining issues in the action. Cool. Is that action is or is not published in the marketplace? It is not, correct?
No, it's not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Very good. Any other questions or topics on SMI conformance?
Nope.
Thank you. So, uh, I guess we will all join today's SMI meeting and see this in action. Yeah. And Lee is sharing the details of the meeting. So moving on to the next item, we have Abhishek. Abhishek, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm on the call. So I'm not ready with this operations list yet, so I won't be able to present this now.
Yep. Okay. It's fine. It's not a demo, but just let's discuss what operations are going to be provided.
Okay. So basically, there will be a resync operation which lets you rediscover or basically sync again with the Kubernetes cluster.
Okay, good. I'll take notes, I guess, as you go. Like, you have this written down anywhere, the work that you're doing?
No, I was going to, but I haven't done it.
Okay. Resync, which is a database purge and reinitialization of mesh sync, basically. Keep going.
And apart from that, the operator also lets you know about the. It's not more of an operation, but operator will let you know about the location of uh, brokers and etc. Like that's if that's considered as an operation.
I'm sorry, it lets you know about the what?
The location of where the broker is running at, the address of it. It
Okay.
keeps updating the address.
What's the name of the endpoint, or what's the name of the operation?
It's not an endpoint, as in you cannot invoke it, but it keeps running in the background. It's kind of like a controller or job.
Okay, so what about the ad hoc connectivity test?
On the connectivity test, deprovision. You can also get to know about the connectivity if Meshery server is receiving events from the broker.
Okay. Do you have a plan for what that mechanically will be?
Yeah, uh, it's it's not yet pushed, but yeah, basically we check the connection of the current connection of broker, and based on that, we update status.
Yeah, or I mean, yeah, but I'm asking for details of like what is that going to do? You invoke an ad hoc connectivity test, and are you going to insert a synthetic term, or what's going to happen? Okay, and maybe that's just more thought on that, but if we recap real quick, it sounds like Abhishek, sounds like we might end up in a place where there are these operations. There's a resync operation, which performs a database purge and reinitialization of MeshSync. If we break down each of these into individually invocable operations, a database purge versus a reinitialization, does that logically make sense?
Uh, Individually invocable as in a separate APIs kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does
I
that
mean,
logic?
it's possible. Yeah, it is possible today.
Okay. Okay, great. Then we already have the ability to provision and deprovision Meshery operator from a Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And then we're kind of thinking about the connectivity test at the moment. This connectivity test is it's really a mesh sync connectivity. There is already a connectivity test for the Meshery operator, if I recall.
Yeah, there is already one.
All right, very good. Okay, I'll try to, iterate on this list with you and let the rest of the meeting go forth. Were there any other operations that you had on the top of your mind?
No, these are the ones.
Okay, okay, cool. Thank you. Anybody else have comments on this? Does anybody else have? I know Nitish, I know you'll be using some of these soon. I know those that have worked on MeshSync have separate operations, I believe, for deploying Meshery operator. But think about this: those that are working on Meshery CTL, it might be the case that people would want to, those same APIs, people that would be exposed in Meshery UI, people might want to invoke those from Meshery CTL as well. So, think about that. So like a pre-flight check, hey, is this Meshery deployment healthy? Well, a pre-flight check might, or not pre-flight, but a health check rather, might be an invocation of this connectivity test. And the same thing could be said for all of the adapters. So anyone who's used Meshery in the UI, you've seen those. Material UI calls them these adapter chips. You can click on the chip and it'll do a quick like ping test. It'll say, oh, Meshery can talk to Kubernetes. Meshery can talk to its adapters. You can click the button a whole bunch of times in a row and get these notifications. So the same thing would be true for Mesh Sync and Meshery Operator. Those same ping tests, the same connectivity tests, those might be things that at some point we should plan for exposure in Meshery's CLI as a health check. And I believe that we have those written down. They said, Piyush, have we created those yet?
I think Piyush just left, like, yes, but I think it's written down.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other comments on this topic? So yeah, if you can see my screen, like, yeah, we have it written down in Meshery CTL for Meshery CTL system check, like, we are testing the connectivities and all. Okay. So moving on to the next item, we have a demo on the connection wizard from Nitish. Nitish, would you like to share your screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so I hope you guys are able to see the screen. So actually, recently I was working on a new feature for Meshery called Connection Wizard. And if you want to get the context of what it is about and what it's trying to do, you can go to the issue that's 2434. But actually, like the shape that it's trying to take right now, it's a little bit different from what is being described here. But still, it should give you a context of what it is trying to do. Yep. So coming to the configuration, connection wizard. So yeah, so the main idea of this is that you should be having, like, for the first time user, there should be a way for him to we should be actually navigating him to configure the whole setup of Meshery, so that he doesn't have to go to the settings page and he might be lost here or there. So uh, that is something that we are trying to achieve with the configuration, connection wizard. So actually, like, one point that I want to discuss beforehand is that the name was actually before it was named as configuration wizard, in the sense that we are trying to configure things in the Meshery, but right now it has been renamed to connection wizard because mm, like, when you think about this whole what it's actually trying to do, it is actually trying to establish a connection with the Meshery components. It is not it does not have the capability to provision and deprovision something. So that's a distinction which made us to shift from naming it configuration wizard to connection wizard. So yeah, in the first like, there are 4 steps, and these 4 steps are considered to be the default steps that the user can take to configure, to set up the connection. So in the first step, we have a connection to the Kubernetes cluster. So first of all, like, when the user comes to lands on this page, like, the UI will check whether the cluster has been configured or not, and it will try to ping the Kubernetes cluster. And if it succeeds, like, the screen that is shown right here will be displayed to the user, and it would actually get all the information from the Meshery server, and it will display over here. Like, you can see the current context and Kubernetes version. Like, this is actually similar to what we have in the settings page right now. And yeah, if you want, like, we can actually disclose this connection, and we can upload a new config file if the user wants to do so. So the one thing that we should keep in mind is that it's not like, it is only deep, it's not it's only making the connection or breaking the connection. It's not provisioning or deprovisioning something. So that is something we have to keep in mind. And yeah, you could actually ping, like, these tips are we see everywhere, we see these things everywhere in Meshery, and these do the same thing that they intend to do, that is, they ping the component that is described there. So moving on to the next step, we have Meshery operator, which is exactly the same thing. Like, it tries to connect to the Meshery operator, and if it is successful, then it displays this page, and if it is not, then actually if it is not, then it kind of becomes like a bug, because if it is not configured, then like from what I understand, like whenever you run Meshery CTL system start, it actually does all these things in the background. And if it is not, like if the Meshery operator is not yet running, then it should not technically open the UI, right? Like I'm not totally sure on this, but that is something that is not yet being attended to right now. So if the connection is not yet there, then we have to think about what we should actually be doing in that case. And yeah, you have the status of these things, like my meshing and nats are actually not connected right now, so they are in disabled state, but my operator is connected. So when I try to ping it right now, there is an issue with it that I guess it's because since meshing and nats are not being connected, like those are not connected, right? So when I try to ping it, the response won't come back and it gets stuck. So that is something we have to, like I'll have to change that behavior. So yeah, coming to the service meshes, like there has been a lot of thinking process involved in this thing, because uh, when you think about service mesh, like it can be such that like yeah, so basically what we're trying to implement right now is that we should actually see, like we will ping the adapter, like whether the adapters are available or not. And if an adapter for a particular service mesh is available, we'll show the, like we'll colorize this thing and make it display as it is connected to the adapter. So basically it's what it means here is that it's a connection to the adapter, whether it is successful or not. And yeah, if it is not, then you can provide the URL and context. And it's basically like establishing the connection to the adapter. So these things, when we see that, like like we would notice that it is exactly the same thing as we are having in the settings page right now. But the thing is that when we like when Meshery grows, right, like at that time we would be intending to have different things in the settings page, such as like we would actually be trying to have very complicated things in the settings page rather than the things that we're having right now, such as managing multiple service meshes and all those kind of things. Yep. So eventually, like the functionalities that are being done over here, like will be transferred to like these things would be configured in the connection wizard. So this would become something of a different nature. Yeah. So that's where it's going right now. And even in the dashboard, when you look at it, like rather than like when you think about it, like the dashboard should actually be describing about what Meshery is about and how it is managing multiple service meshes and all those kind of things. But rather it's trying to show the connection and this kind of stuff, which in the future would be better if you could put it in the connection wizard, like have a that's what it's trying to achieve now. Like when you look at it, this is trying to check whether the connection to Kubernetes is successful or not, and this is the same for adapters and all those things. But these things would actually be shifted to the connection wizard that we are building right now. Yep. And the service mesh UI right now, like it's not fully complete, because like we should the thought was that we should actually show all the adapters that are available. I mean all the service meshes that Meshery could eventually get connected to. But right now we are only showing 3. So the idea is to have them in a vertical carousel kind of thing, and in the right side pane you show the same data plane that we're showing over here, and it would actually be it would be the state of a particular card that is focused right now. So in that case you could actually switch between the service meshes and see what the status of those things are. And yeah, that's what and I have not yet implemented it, because like I was working on getting these two things done. And yes, that is something I'll be working on in the future. And the same thing would be for the matrix as well. And one more challenge with the metrics thing is that metrics like Grafana and Prometheus, these things are actually in the context of a particular service mesh. So in those cases, like we are not yet there, like we are not yet sure as to what we should be doing for that case. And yeah, so that's where we are. But aim right now is to have the same thing that we are having right now in the service mesh. Like you have a carousel over there, and this right side a data plane that shows the status of the connection for Grafana and Prometheus. So yeah, I guess it is. I guess I have covered everything that I intended to cover. If you guys have any doubts or anything, like you have anything to add to this or any suggestions, you guys are welcome to add.
Yeah, I'm sure like there were a couple of questions on the chat. Like, would someone like to talk about like, oh, what the configuration, why we need a configuration wizard in the first place? Like, oh,
Wait, yeah, didn't Navendu, was that aimed at me? I didn't hear.
yeah, like, so the thing you mentioned on the chat, Lee, like, could you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So originally, so hey, here's our situation. People go to use Meshery, and they find that mesh sync isn't connected, or the operator didn't deploy, or that they can't talk to an adapter, or that they can having trouble getting Meshery to talk to the Kubernetes instance that they wanted it to talk to, and like any number of underlying infrastructure issues get in the way of all of that. Bad credentials, lack of network connectivity, container fell over, blah, 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 blah. It just like goes on, all kinds of things. Your Cube API isn't exposed, isn't even reachable. Like you're using AKS, you don't have the right, like there's all kinds of things. And so we're trying to help guarantee that, and so like the answer can be today, the answer is great. Hey, these things you can work through them. Some of them you can just go to the settings area, and there's an advanced set of all of the configuration that you can do from here. Good. And to the layman or to the new user, it's like, okay, so you mean I've got to get Grafana and Prometheus connected, one or more Kubernetes clusters pointed to different contexts. What if I have 10 clusters and I have 5 contexts, 10 contexts in my kubectl, my kube config, but I actually have multiple kube configs. Like it's going to go on and get pretty hairy and great. Meshery is going to deal with those things. Meshery is going to let people do highly configurable deployments. But in the meantime, people who are just deploying Minikube and try to connect Meshery, like fumble and something happens, and it's like, oh my goodness. And then they reach out in the Slack and they say, hey, what's going on? Can you help? And it's like, oh goodness. Boy, maybe it's a bug, maybe it's not, maybe it's an environment thing. And so giving them tooling, like a diagnostics tool to say, hey, can you send in the diagnostics report? We'll take a quick look and determine briefly, quickly what the issue is. Great, okay, that will be helpful. What would be even more helpful is to not say, can you run a diagnostics report that members of the community can help you with, but is rather to say, you know what, here's a diagnostics tool for you. Here's an opinionated walkthrough. We were referring, and by the way, there's a whole write-up on this. There's a whole Google Doc or a couple of them, and there's mock-ups and other things on what was being referred to as the configuration wizard. Just this week, this has been renamed from configuration wizard to connectivity wizard because more of the configuration and the advanced configuration will be done in the settings area. So Nitish, if you might have already gone there, but can you go to settings briefly in case, and so what the connectivity wizard will be is an opinionated guide such that whenever someone says, I can't connect to my Kubernetes or I can't the Meshery operator isn't deployed or it's not talking to me. It's like, great. Can you go to the connectivity wizard? Are all 3 of those or all 4 of those steps lit up green? Yes, yes, good, you're cool. Great. Then like, there's no question, you're good. No, one of them's red. Okay, then like here's it's supposed to facilitate and grease the wheel, facilitate people having successful initial deployments that are simple in nature and grease those wheels. Eventually the settings area is going to go quite deep with the concept environments, 40 different Kubernetes clusters and what operators are running on which ones. and blah, blah. And just like, it's going to go on for a while. You've got, and this is, I'm not making up these numbers. These aren't like grossly large numbers in any respect. Like a 40 cluster environment, sure. No, that's like, it's not very big. With 5 Istio service meshes or 10 across the 40, that's also quite not that large. It is early days for people having tons of service meshes, but eventually that won't be the case. Like there's been a trend for people to downsize the size of their clusters, therein increasing the number of clusters that they have, also therein increasing the number of service mesh deployments that they have. Like it's coming. Service mesh sprawl, yeah, it's a thing, it'll happen, it's coming. To unify them, a tool like Meshery will really help. Point is, it's going to get complex, the configuration. If you've ever used a software installer, where you install the software and you go next, quick install, custom install. The settings area is the custom install, custom configuration. The connectivity wizard, of which there'll be an icon in the nav bar that probably looks like Merlin's hat or a magic wand or a wand with a gear with a wand over top, some quick wizard that is a forced step through in a sequential manner to say, if all 4 or 3 of these light up green, you're good. If not, here's simplified troubleshooting steps to take you through. And guess what? If you follow this next in the connectivity wizard, you'll have a successful, if you go into the settings area and you do advanced configuration, you might just shoot yourself in the foot. Watch out. At least over here, that's not going to be the case. So Samir, a lot of that was probably aimed toward you. And if that doesn't make sense, or if you still think like, oh, hey, that's confusing, that there's a simplified view, one that forces an opinionated walkthrough versus what I described for settings, we should definitely talk, because we don't want to make it confusing. The point is to actually guarantee people are successful with a deployment. So with a simple deployment, the advanced stuff like a configurable callback URL, that's an advanced setting, like, and it'll be in the advanced section then. So
yeah, and one thing comes to my mind in the settings wizard. Will it be a good idea to show those in a mesh map way so that people can see what exactly, rather than writing it in a plain text or all this?
yeah, I think that, yes, I think so. Or I would say, I think that you could actually say, I think yes is the answer to that question. If you ask that question of anything, of any aspect of what you're configuring, would it be easier if it was in a visual topology? Yeah,
Yeah.
it probably is. Like, there's a couple of questions that having a tabular format is actually, it's probably easier. Like, and these are questions like, what's my, I don't know, when you visually represent it, it's pretty intuitive and snaps your attention to it right away as well. But it would be something like, who's my top talker? Which services that of the ones that I'm running, which ones are receiving the most traffic? Like if you have that in a tabular format, you can just sort the columns and see, oh, here's my top 5 sources of traffic or destinations for traffic. Great, that's very, okay, that works well for a tabular thing. You can also show that visually where you're showing like, there's a big fat pipe of traffic coming across and it's massively red right in your face. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a top talker. Anyway, point is, yeah, I think that a visual topology is quite compelling in general.
Let me just interrupt. So we are out of time for this meeting. So I, like, as you might have guessed, we are still going to go a bit longer. So if anyone wants to leave this call, please feel free to do so and don't be compelled to stay here. So thank you everyone for joining. I'll see you next week and in the other meetings that's happening this week. So yeah, back to you, Lee and.
Great. No, back to there's a couple of other folks I think that we're going to demo some things. It'd be great to try to get them squeezed in.
Sure. Thank you, Nidesh. Really looking forward to have this released. And yeah. Moving on, we have Utkarsh. Utkarsh, would you like to?
And one thing before Utkarsh goes, so in the Meshery UI, does I get a notification that a new release has been there? So because
Yeah, and you should see that on your dashboard. Like today in the lower right-hand corner, it should show you and tell you if you're running the latest release or not, if that's what you were saying.
yes. Sorry, I didn't get much attendance.
No, cool. No, good suggestion. Yeah, good.
Okay, so basically for the context, recently there was a requirement that we noticed was to facilitate a few features, to facilitate a few infrastructure, to say, and that was that earlier Meshery server as well as Meshery cloud used to assume that the redirect URI would look like /API/user/token. So basically, this was sort of hard-coded. A PR was recently raised. I actually raised that PR, which adds this particular change to Meshery. That is basically now you can provide a environmental variable to Meshery server via Meshery CTL. Of course, I'm actually demoing it on Meshery server directly because the image, basically this PR hasn't been merged yet, so there is no image to run in the cluster. So I'm demoing it on the Meshery server. So you can actually give in a custom callback URL to Meshery server, and it will make sure that it passes on this particular redirect URL or callback URL to the Meshery provider, and it will also make sure that it adheres to the it redirects you to the URL that you are actually passing. So it should actually serve the use case that we had earlier. That is, let's say Meshery is running behind a proxy and you are redirecting it via a prefix. So you have something like this. You can actually what you can do is when you spin up Meshery via Meshery CTL, you can use the same environmental variable instead of running make run fast there. This is actually a make recipe. What you can do is you can run Meshery CTL system start, and it will pass on this particular environmental variable to the manifest or the Docker Compose, whatever platform you're using. So for the sake of demo, let's do it. Okay, now I'm going to start my Meshery server, and I'm actually running Meshery Cloud also locally because obviously Meshery Cloud hasn't the PR hasn't been merged on the Meshery Cloud also. So that's why both of the systems are running locally on the system as of now. Let's wait for it to start up. Yeah. So now if I would go to localhost 9081, it redirected me to this particular page because actually I already chose a provider once. I'm signing in with GitHub, and it will redirect me to localhost :8080/istio. This was supposed to be a proxy URL, and that is basically whatever you actually provided in here. Just because I provided localhost :8080/istio, it actually redirected me to this particular URL. And actually, I'm running a node server, which is actually capturing it. It's just returning back whatever was returned from the server, basically the token in this case. So it redirected me to localhost :8080/istio, and this is basically the response for the like how it would be used or how it would change things. So for we have Katacoda use case where the callback URL is not exactly localhost 9081 something. We can actually now start providing a custom callback URL. For I think Samir also had a similar issue. That is, the Meshery was running behind a proxy, and the traffic was getting redirected based on a prefix, I guess. So now what can happen is this can just be HTTP equal / that particular endpoint slash Meshery slash API slash user slash token. One caveat is that you will have to make sure that this always end with unless and until there is a custom redirection that happens internally in the proxy, which can definitely happen. So if it's a simple prefix-based proxy, that is, you just see that, hey, if the request is coming to /Meshery /something, just relate it to /API /user /token, then that's fine. Other than that, you will actually have to basically add this particular suffix. The reason is that Meshery actually expects the endpoint, the handler actually expects the token to be received at this particular endpoint. So this is a minor caveat that you can control the entire thing except the suffix. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And I hope I was audible.
That's $2 again.
Oh, I thought that was the screen.
Samir has a question like, is this configuration a part of Helm values.yaml file?
Oops, no, not yet Helm, only manifest. And so basically Meshery CTL supports it. So anything that Meshery CTL does, you can do it from there. Helm is something that, yeah, I have to, either I'll add it in the same PR or I'll create a new one. So no, not yet Helm, only Meshery CTL.
Like by Meshery CTL, like, do you mean like this is a configurable thing in the mesh config file?
No, not mesh config actually. So what you should be able to do is just run this. This was not supposed to be actually a user specific setting or something. So
yeah,
you should be able to do this. And this particular environmental variable would be actually passed on to the Docker Compose or the manifest, whatever platform is basically the context platform is. So the environmental variable will actually be passed on.
Okay, got it. Other questions to Utkarsh? Yes, nobody has questions, or everyone thinks it's really good. Please giving the thumbs up.
I think it's really good. That's great. Samir, do you, okay, of what you've seen thus far, it looks like this would fit your use case. And for Neha, and I don't know if Suhani is still on, but this also fixes an issue in the Service Mesh Labs in Katacoda and the ability to use Meshery Cloud in there. It's great.
I'll stop sharing now.
Cool. Anything else?
So I guess we should move on to the next item. I don't know if any of these people are on the call today.
Okay. Hi, Navindu. I'm there.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. So Neha, would you like to go ahead with the
Yeah.
topic?
So the issue which Suhani and me are working. As you already explained about the that Meshery CTL system start command, it should not override that meshery.yaml file. But we have few queries on that before implementing the changes. Basically, like what is happening is whenever we use config.yaml and it overrides in the meshery.yaml, so that is expected behavior. But as you mentioned that if power users want to change in the docker compose.yaml, it should not override the the changes. Okay, So the question here is like, what are those changes? Like, how do we start implementing this? Because in the config.yaml, we have like few parameters which gets overwrite in the Meshery file. So, I mean, if we see in the Meshery.yaml, we have ports, volumes. I mean, what all changes we are expecting, that which power users can change. And yeah, and the second question is about like, what if config.yaml overrides? Suppose I'm gonna change tag in the Meshery.yaml, and if I run that command system start, config.yaml will override that change. So is it allowed or not?
What was the last question again?
Yeah, so the Meshery CTL, so basically config.yaml overrides the adapters, channel and version parameters, right? So what if power user changes that value directly in the Meshery.yaml as he has, and config.yaml will override that. Is it allowed or not?
Yeah, I think so. Like let me try to
Yeah.
share
Can you
my
just
screen.
explain that use cases and the combinations which we want here?
Yeah. So ideally, like we want the user to configure the whole aspects of their Meshery deployment through their config.yaml file.
Mm-hmm.
So for a like these should be enough for a normal user, but we also have let them have the ability to modify things in the Docker Compose file or the Kubernetes manifest. So the config.yaml will be the source of truth for everything that is set here, and for things that are overwritten here, like what Meshery CTL does right now is to rewrite the entire Docker Compose file. Basically, it just downloads the Docker Compose file from GitHub, but it doesn't persist it. It doesn't. It basically rewrites the entire thing from scratch. So instead, what we should be doing is like rewrite the stuff that is written in the config.yaml file, but uh, we can persist things, the other things, like if they for any reason change these things, then we can just allow them to, like we can respect the change, and yeah, instead of overwriting it, just use it as it is. But if user has overwritten something, so if they have changed, if they removed an adapter from the Docker Compose file, but they have provided it in the config file, then we can take we can use the config.yaml file and add the adapter as well. So
Okay. And so user will change Docker Compose YAML file or Meshery.yaml, power user?
yeah, so the Meshery.yaml file is basically the Docker Compose file.
Okay, so the code which we have seen is like when it downloads that file, there we have to provide the options of persisting the changes and then overwriting it and then copying it in the Meshery file, right?
Yeah, basically read in the config for the Docker Compose file into a struct, and then change only the values that that are in the mesh config, the config.yaml file.
Okay. Yeah, fine. We'll work on this, Narendra.
Okay, thanks. Uh, Anyone else has comments or different opinions about this?
I think one thing that I'll be like, if I think that it's like stepping in a pile of poop, of manure. Like it's not easy. It's not exactly what we want to spend a lot of time in, is allowing people to have their cake and eat it too, which is to customize certain aspects, like provide endless support for whatever customizations that they're going to want to put into their Kubernetes manifests and into their Docker Compose files, because that's a lot. And like us, like Meshery CTL, trying to take all that on and internalize it and guarantee that those customizations won't be overridden is difficult. It is convenient for Meshery CTL to facilitate the deployments to deploy itself. And the way that it deploys itself is by using platform-specific manifests, either Kubernetes or Docker. The manifests that Meshery itself generates, people do want to customize. That's in part why people like Helm, because they can, or customize, they can use values.yaml to provide or customize to provide environment-specific configuration. So we definitely, and that'll always be a use case. We definitely want to facilitate for it. Like the great starting point for this is just to provide clarity on what customizations are honored and persisted from upgrade to upgrade, from reset to reset, from context to context. So people, and then all of you, then Neha and all of you will be in a really good position to be more fervent in your opinionated stance, that whatever that stance is, like some users want to deploy on a certain type of network. So in this manifest, this compose file that we're looking at, they want to be able to specify network equal host, network driver equal this, and they want to configure those things. It's like, look, that's totally legitimate. Like, yeah, that's what's required in their environment. Oh my goodness, we can't like create Meshery CTL commands for all those things. So how do we? But we do need to dictate in some cases, like if one of the use cases, if we release another adapter, like for app mesh out of AWS, for example, and someone goes to upgrade, well, how do we make sure that they get that adapter if we don't, if Meshery CTL doesn't go into their context and say, here's a new adapter, like we're walking the fence or walking the tight line on facilitating upgrades and getting people new features automatically, while at the same time trying to balance honoring any custom configurations they have. So I don't know. I think there can be multiple right answers.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. So actually what you said makes sense. And here that's what I was also thinking about. Like what if user provides his YAML file based on the platform and we use instead that file instead of checking the Docker Compose, and simply we can use that file and overwrite it instead of checking which parameter is changed, right? And providing options.
And I think that like it's a reasonable, like it's like there are multiple wrong answers and multiple right answers or what have you. Like they almost all become correct answers if we're just not lying to if we're being forthright with the user and saying, hey, don't touch that area. Like we're going to overwrite that, like, or like as long as we're, then they can say, okay, now I get it. Like, okay, I will always use the flag -- skip reset. And I'll just like bake that into my alias because I never want Meshery CTL to overwrite my context because I've totally customized the heck out of it. And so like part of it is just like, hey, at some point we have to have, if the user wants to be smart and do smart, complex things, okay, then they're going to have to read this doc because that's the cost of them doing highly customized things. And so, and that's totally legitimate. That's okay. Like you can ask that of users.
Yeah.
Nice. And so, yeah, Neha, it sounded of what I didn't listen to the whole conversation, but just for my 2 cents is like, I think that all of you have sound heads on your shoulders. And what I just heard each of you describe was like, yeah, those things make sense. And I think you get the problem statement at hand, and it's kind of, we sort of have one foot in being authoritative for their manifest and one foot in like, oh, you can customize it. And to start with, if we just make clear where that line is, we'll be in a defensible position with the user who says, why the heck did you overwrite my customizations? We'll say, well, did you read the doc? Or when it said, are you sure that you want to override your settings? And they said yes, then we can say, okay, like, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's still will be clear because I see there are a lot of like changes which can be done by users, like changing port, changing volume path, changing adapter name, changing, and like there are a lot of things. So that is I mean the challenge, and all this resides in one file doc, and if you are going to do that, and so I think we need some design here, and we need to think, and maybe I'll think, and we can just come on some design, and then we can go ahead and implement this. Sure.
Sounds good, Neha. So since we are already half hour past, I think the item we missed was just demo on the Meshery CTL token command. So would you like to demo it right now, or
if you want, I can go ahead and you tell me.
Yeah, I'm all up for the demos.
Okay, so shall I share my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So is my screen visible?
That's an extra $2.
Hello? I missed the joke. Okay, so basically the token command, I've added a token command for the CRUD operations on tokens inside mesh config. So the first command is Meshery CTL system token create. So right now, as you can see, the tokens array is empty. So if I do not provide the path by the F flag, the default path is auth.json. So I can create, if I create this default token, it would be added here with this default path. If I give it a custom path, let's say dot Meshery / auth.json, it would, okay, wait. Okay, so it already exists. Yeah, so I had just created default token, so I have to give another name. So let's say it's default 2. So default 2 is created with this custom path that we provided. Another thing is that another is the view command. So if the user provides a bad name, it just prompts the user to choose from the variable commands. So right now we have two commands, tokens, commands I said. And if the user gives an all flag, it will just list out all the available tokens, or we can choose a specific token. So this is basically the view command. Another command is, so we have a list command, which will basically list all the available tokens, which in this case are default and default 2. Another one is the delete command. So I can give it to, so basically it deleted it from here. Another one is the last one is, I guess this is the last one. So we have create, delete, list, set. Yeah, of course. So the set command. So user can set a token for a specific context. So if the context flag is not given, it will set the token for the current context. So right now, if I just do this, it will set the token for the current context as the name I provided it. So there is this issue I ran into. So the thing is that if I do not specify the token name here, and if I just comment it out, or just let's say that user deletes or removes this token name line, and if I try to log in, the thing that happens is that, wait, I'll just show you what happens. If the user tries to log in, so the login what the login does is it goes into the current context, it looks for the token name, it then it writes the custom path is /home/ dot meshery default the default path or .json. So it writes the token there, and if I do not provide the token name, it will basically just do wait, it's still initiating login. Okay, so yeah, so it gives out an empty token name here, so which will basically we won't be even able we won't be able to delete it because there is no name. It basically doesn't have any name. So one thing I would recommend is if we can have an additional check inside of login that if the token name is not specified, we can go ahead and maybe tell the user that you don't have a token name, or maybe set the token name for this specific context. Otherwise we're going to have these empty token names here.
Ashish, there's something that I think we're starting to see happen in Meshery CTL, and that is like this, we're taking the user experience kind of one step further, and I think you're advancing this agenda, and that is like when, you know, we can tell the user, I get, yeah. Anyway, we can give the user what they want. Like sometimes you'll execute a command using a CLI, you misspell the command, and it says, I don't know what you're talking about. It's kind of what it responds with, like error. Other CLIs, you'll execute it and it'll return back and say, oh, did you mean this other word that is a really close spelling? And you're like, oh yeah, that's it, good. Okay, thanks, that was helpful. And I think we're in that same context, like we're taking the next step and we're beginning to prompt people, like when it's like really obvious, hey, if you have this token that is a white space for a name, maybe that's kind of an illegal thing and shouldn't be allowed. That I'll give an example, and I don't think that we should necessarily go do what I'm about to say, but I'll give an example of ideally the frame of mind that we're using as we're designing commands. And that is, if someone says token list, and the Golang procedure the function goes to get the list, and it identifies the fact that there's an illegal token name, like a white space. Well, why would that be? How is that possible? Well, someone probably manually edited their config file. Okay, well, so we can tell the user, bang, you know, we'll just like delete that, it's gone. Or we can, like what we would do is probably suggest to them that, oh, hey, there's a missing name. What would you like to give it a name? Great, they type it in and we say, okay, and then keep going. And then we give them the list. I don't think that we should go through all that trouble for the thing I just said, but I wanted to call it out as I don't think that we should shy away from prompting people for some things. I don't think that we should go do what I just said, which is like fix all the things for them. But there's a certain set of common or pitfalls that will be. I thought Navendi was commenting on what I was saying. I was like, oh, geez, okay, I guess not. I don't know. You know, geez. No, there's a certain set of pitfalls that people will run into. And there's a subset of those that will be common pitfalls that we might want to take an extra moment to sort of try to help them address the issue, prompt them with something. And so that's great. And I think, are you using prompt UI in a couple of places?
Yeah, and I'm using that in the list. In actually the view command, you specified if user enters the wrong token or a token that doesn't exist, I should prompt them.
Nice, cool. And that, like when you think about it from that perspective, it's like, you know, like okay, like I think most of you who work on Meshery CTL, thank you, Neha. It becomes pretty evident, or it becomes pretty easy to. Great. I think, did we merge your token PR already? And you're working on unit tests separately?
No, actually I was expecting you to give some suggestions or feedback or to change things maybe. So it still hasn't been merged yet.
is it under the experimental area?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. If it was under experimental, then we should just go merge because it's pretty good. It's been through a few reviews, you know, like since it isn't, there aren't many people that are just randomly discovering new commands. So I would ask, you know, Husseina and Navendu if it would be okay to, you know, go ahead and merge the token PR, understanding that I think right now does it or does it not have an adverse effect on how tokens are referenced currently? Like I guess what I'm trying to say is this a one-time shift and it'll break other, if this isn't done well, is it going to break other things? Or is this just is this in preparation for the ability to manage tokens as an independent entity? I think this.
No, I don't think it'll break anything. Yeah.
Cool. So I mean, you know, thumbs up for me. We should.
Yeah, I'll just review it and merge it. Okay. So, any other comments here?
Good work, Ashish. Looking good, man. Looking good. Also, the annoying ongoing joke, which I think is funny, but I consider it might be annoying to others, is that seconds count when we're trying to squeeze in all the demos. And so if someone says, "Can you see my screen?" It's like, oh, it's like another 15 seconds down the drain. Like everyone has to reach for their mute button. Like what? I don't. And then 10 people say, "Yeah, and then you say, "What? I couldn't." You can, or you can. And you're like, fine. All right. Somebody's gonna pay $2 for fine. So it's just a joke.
Got it. Yeah, that's funny.
Cool. Thank you all for hanging out as long as everybody has. It's really nice to see all the demos. It's really good stuff going on.
Yeah, thank you all for joining and staying up this late. So I guess I'll see you on the next week's meeting, and maybe I'll see you on the community meeting on Friday as well. Just a quick note, we have a new meeting tomorrow for service mesh performance, which is another layer 5 project that has been recently adopted into the CNCF. So I think it's the same time tomorrow, same time as the Meshery development meeting. So tomorrow will be the first official meeting after we have been adopted into the CNCF. So it's on the community calendar. So if you're interested, please join that. With that, I bid you farewell. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.